and welcome once again to this hashtag, The Struggle is Real, our series on love, sex, and relationships that I get to open with again. How many of you were here last year when I spoke? Do you remember what I talked about last year?
Nope.
Do any of you retain it? You don't have to yell no.
Love.
Love. What did I say about love?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Oh, I asked if you were here last year. All right, well, fortunately, this is the exact same presentation, so you will learn, and you will retain it this time.
No.
So, the four loves. Love is a very vague word in English, and a while ago, I found some different dictionary definitions in the ways for which it is used. So, the first one here, an intense feeling of deep affection. And, that seems pretty straightforward, right? Next one, a great interest and pleasure in something. Like, Braden, what's a love in your life? What is one of your great loves? Gaming. A true gamer over here. Emily, what is one of your greatest loves in life?
Her Roblox boyfriend. Yeah.
Her Roblox boyfriend. That still makes me chuckle.
I have 17 in my house.
Excellent. So that gets into the next definition. So, love can be used as a countable noun. So you can have many loves in life, which in Emily's case is her 17 Roblox boyfriends. And then, fourth of all, a bit more abstract, it can be used as a score in different games like tennis and squash. So if you have a score of 0 and the other person has a score of 15, the score is 15 love against you. Now, love is important, of course, because it's part of the greatest commandment. It's part of many commandments in the Bible, but especially the ones that Jesus specifically says are the greatest. As you guys might remember, there was someone who went up to Jesus and asked him, Lord, which is the greatest commandment in the Bible? And he said there are two greatest commandments. The first is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind, and all your strength. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, if we don't have a specific idea of what love means, do you think we'll be able to fulfill these commandments well? Right. Do you guys love pizza?
No. Yes.
Yeah. Most of you do. Do you think Jesus has the same love in mind that we have for pizza when he's talking about love God or love your neighbor? No. Right. I made this joke last year, and I think a few of you got it, but if you loved your mom the same way you loved your pizza, you'd have an edible complex about one or the other. Very funny. So, anyways, in this presentation, so once again, today I'm going to shamelessly plagiarize C.S. Lewis, who is an acclaimed author and theologian. He goes through 4 major concepts of love that are used throughout Scripture. Some are mentioned by name in the original Greek in the Bible, in the New Testament. Others aren't mentioned explicitly, but the concepts are there, and knowing about them helps us understand love a bit more. Remember a few weeks ago when someone asked a question in a question box about the problem of evil, and Grant answered that evil needs good to exist, right? Where God creates good things, right? Evil is just when people take good things and use them to selfish ends or to bad ends. Like, you guys would agree that Elmer's white glue is good, right? It's really good at putting, gluing stuff together. Is it good to sniff?
Yeah. It smells good.
Is it good to eat?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm concerned about some of you, but so if you use something, this is not yet an open discussion. If you use something in a way that it was not intended for, it no longer is good. It becomes bad, and it's quite hurtful. And the same thing is true with all of the things I'm going to mention today. God made love. He made familial love. He made friendship. He made romantic love. All of these things are good. But because we are people and because we are fallen, we often use them for evil ends, and we use them to hurt each other. And I'll be mentioning some of that as well. So, what is love? And I put a Night at the Roxbury reference in there. That's funny to me, probably to your parents. It's being recorded. If your parents see this, they'll think that's funny. 4 loves. The first one in the Bible is storge, which is familial love. So in the New Testament, Paul writes about this. He's talking about people who are evil and hate God. He describes them as senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. And the word that he uses for heartless is astoilikos, which means they don't have familial love. Do you know anyone who hates their family, like on a fundamental level? They don't tend to be nice people, do they? It's like I'm not talking about that your family annoys you, but like people who hate their family, like Kylo Ren in Star Wars, where he finally gave into hate to his father and killed him. Spoiler alert on a movie that's 5 years old. And then even though the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and not in Greek, we still see familial love there as well. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And that's in the Ten Commandments. And also, that's the only commandment that has a promise attached to it, that you live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you if you honor your father and mother. Familial love is excellent, right? How many of you guys have really good, loving families? Yeah, a lot of you do, and that's an awesome blessing. Sometimes familial love can go wrong, like when parents smother their children with affection and don't let them grow up well. I was thinking about this lately. How many of you guys in literature class have read Oedipus Rex? Well, if you haven't yet, you will, and you will understand. That is a very messed up sort of familial love. So, the name of the play, Oedipus Rex, is an ancient Greek play. Very messed up story. In high school, you'll learn about it, and hopefully you'll think back to this. That is where familial love goes wrong. Philia, affectionate love, friendship. In Romans, it says, be devoted to one another in brotherly love, philostoikos. Honor one another above yourselves. So, St. Paul here takes familial love, stoikos, and friendship, philia, and combines them into one word and talks about brotherly love. And that's how people in the church should have relationships with one another. And then, you guys know about King David, right? Yeah. Who was his best friend? Jonathan, right. And whose son was Jonathan? Yeah.
King Saul.
Correct. So, and did King Saul and David get along very well? No. What happened?
He tried to kill him.
Yeah, Saul tried to kill David. And despite all of that, and then remember, around Halloween I talked about how Saul contacted the ghost of Samuel, and the ghost told him that he would die in battle. That was a scary story. Well, that did happen. And Saul and his sons, including Jonathan, David's friend, died in battle. It was really sad. So even though David got to be king, because he was the next king after Saul, he mourned for Saul, even though he was his enemy, because God picked him to be king before him. And also he mourned for his friend, Jonathan. He says, I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. Which is a huge thing, because David was married to at least 4 women, one of which he murdered her husband in a second-degree sort of way to get her. And Jonathan's friendship meant more to him than that.
Wow.
Have you guys seen where friendship goes wrong before?
Yes.
Yeah. What are some ways that friendship goes wrong?
So like lying.
Lying.
One friend just leaves you.
Abandonment.
When you fight over video games.
What was that?
When you fight over video games.
I can't hear you very well.
When you fight over video games.
Oh.
That doesn't make sense.
Adam?
When your friend finds out that you like something that's childish and they start laughing at you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that before. Some other things that I wrote down. Oh, so I actually grew up in the JHM here when I was your age at Rose Drive Friends, and I also went through high school as well. And what was really hard about that is that a lot of the people in my grade group were really cliquey. But they gossiped behind each other's backs. They made fun of people behind their backs. There was all this friendship and relationship drama. It was really sucky. And it was one of the bad parts about me growing up here at church with that group of friends. And it was unnecessarily hard. There was no reason for them to be like this to each other, but that was just part of human nature to want to one-up each other, even within friendships. And this one, which I know that you are all excited to talk about.
No.
Eros, romantic love. It's also the word that we get, in English we have a word called erotic, and that's the same word we get that from. So the Bible talks about romantic love a lot too. There's actually a whole book about it. In Hebrews, the writer says, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and the sexually immoral. Marriage is a blessing from God, and he wants us to take it very seriously. And of course, Song of Songs is a whole poem in the Old Testament about romantic love. And in it, the author writes, this from the perspective of the woman, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. By the way, so a few weeks ago, I got my hair cut at Grant's apartment, and both he and Kristen were there, and they talked like that all the time to each other. And then they started talking about fruit trees and doves, and it got really weird. What are some ways in what you'll get it if you read Song of Songs? I'm very funny theologically. What are some ways that romantic love can go bad? Breakups.
Before marriage.
What was that?
Like if you do stuff before marriage?
Yeah, sex before marriage. Danica?
Cheating. Like cheating, adultery.
Oh, yeah. Students?
No.
I thought so. That's fine.
Okay.
Are you feeling convicted because of your 17-year-old boyfriends?
When they thank you?
When they prank you.
Oh, you know a lot about that.
I wrote Jacob. Snitching. I'm not sure that has much to do with romantic love, but I think I can. Possibly. Some other things that I wrote down. There's lust. There's selfishness in relationships. There's selfishness. There's people make all sorts of stories about them that people like trashy stories that people love to watch and read, like soap operas and The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
Oh, I love it.
Now, all three of those things that I just talked about, girls. All three of those things that I just talked about are gifts that God has made, and they're good things, but they're things that people can use for selfish ends and to hurt each other. But all three of those are actually a reflection of a larger sort of love that encapsulates them all and is part of the character of God. In the Bible, it calls it agape love. It means unconditional love. Have you guys ever read 1 Corinthians chapter 13? It's usually read at weddings, right? It's the love chapter in the Bible.
Oh.
Yeah, you probably have heard of it before. And we read it at marriages, and it's appropriate that we do so. It's a great chapter. But it actually is talking about not eros, it's talking about agape love. It's about how people in the church should love one another and about how God loves us. And I'll read it now. And now I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then shall we see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So, I'm glad that we get to do this series every year. This is merely meant to introduce the different topics that we'll talk about in the coming weeks, and we'll dive into each of those with more detail and with more depth. But before I let you guys go to talk in your small groups, you guys know about John the Evangelist? He wrote the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
John the Evangelist, who also wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and the book of Revelation, lived to be very old. All the other apostles died in really horrific ways. They all got executed, they got crucified, they got beheaded, some were boiled alive. John was the only one to make it to old age, and he lived at a church in Ephesus where he was the old guy that everyone knew, and people would go up for wisdom. And a few hundred years later, someone wrote this commentary on him. The blessed John the Evangelist lived in Ephesus until extreme old age. His disciples could barely carry him to church, and he could not muster the voice to speak many words. During individual gatherings, he usually said nothing but, "Little children, love one another. Little children, love one another. Little children, love one another." You get it? The disciples and brothers in attendance, annoyed because he always said the same words, finally said, "Teacher, why do you always say that little children love one another?" He finally said, with a line worthy of John, "Because it is the Lord's commandment, and if it alone is kept, it is sufficient."